Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Amanda Schillinger and I'm a Child Care Center Director. My name is spelled AMANDASCHILLINGER. Many people in our child care community are afraid to come forward and share their stories today because they are being targeted. I am glad to be able to be here today to speak in support of them. Here's what I would love to be doing right now today as a Child Care Center Director. I would love to be singing and dancing and playing and reading with children. I'd love to be welcoming families and supporting staff. I would even love to be doing year-end paperwork, but instead, I need to be here. I need to be supporting our childcare industry and the hardworking and dedicated Somali childcare community who are being unfairly vilified, and to make sure that our families and families throughout this great state have childcare and early learning programs for their children, and to make sure our staff have jobs. So let's be honest about how we really got here. Our president decided he doesn't like the Somali community and he wants to destroy them. Speaker DeMuth and the GOP caucus sent a YouTuber out to create the narrative they want out there, not the truth, what they want you to believe. The child care system in Minnesota is very complicated, even for those of us who have worked in it for decades. So I can understand that it is easy to believe what you see on social media. But the truth is that Minnesota has guardrails in place to make defrauding the child care system extremely difficult. Minnesota does investigate suspected fraud in childcare and hold people accountable, and they will continue to do so because fraud is never acceptable. But cutting off childcare funding to everyone in the state is not the answer, and it's not acceptable. So what does it look like when Minnesota childcare funding is frozen? Over 20,000 children in over 4,000 programs across our state will lose access to childcare and early learning. Their families will not be able to go to work because they don't have childcare. Our child care center and others like us will have to close our doors. 75% of the children at our program qualify through the state for child care funding. We can't afford to continue to operate if we lose 75% of our enrollment. Without child care assistance funding, our center will close within a month. As those families no longer have money to spend because they don't have jobs, because they don't have child care, other businesses in our communities will be impacted by a loss of workforce and by a loss of income, and many will have to close their doors as well. You see, freezing child care funding does not just impact families and children, it impacts everyone. During the COVID pandemic, we learned how vital child care was to sustaining our state and country. If we allow this funding freeze to happen, all Minnesotans are going to suffer. We cannot succumb to hate and fear-mongering. It is not who we are as Minnesotans. We are people who surround our communities with love and support. So instead of tearing down our Somali community and our child care centers, let's lift them up. Let's make sure that our children have safe places to learn and grow.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not much of a good speaker, but I'll try my best. My name is Deco Noor. I'm a parent who receives federal funding for childcare for my kiddo. Over 20,000 kids will lose access to childcare programs. And that 20,000 thousands of children rely on childcare, and thousands of parents rely on childcare. Therefore, if childcare will, oh my God. I'm currently a medical student. I rely on childcare. I work. If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Carly Gatiza-Wattoon. I am state representative. I am the DFL co-chair of the Children and Families Committee in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Our job as lawmakers is to show up every day to make Minnesotans' lives better. And Minnesotans deserve to be able to trust that each and every taxpayer dollar is being used responsibly to meet our collective needs. And due to bad actors, that trust is in jeopardy. I'm just as mad as you are. Criminals taking any dollar that is meant to help children and families in the state of Minnesota is completely unacceptable. We're taking fraud seriously. We're working every day to improve our systems, hold those criminals accountable, and move our state forward. That's why it's incredibly frustrating to me that Donald Trump and Republicans want to use this as a political vehicle to cut funding entirely to our state. It's irresponsible. That's right. It's irresponsible at best, and it's despicable at worst to cast blanket dispersions on those caring for our littlest Minnesotans, particularly those of Somali American descent. Imagine if a few people stole food from one of the nation's largest grocers, and instead of strengthening their safeguards, they just decided to stop selling food entirely. Imagine that the country's largest health insurance provider was under federal investigation due to fraudulent claims. And before that investigation was complete, the government just decided to stop funding Medicare and Medicaid entirely. Using a broad brush to eliminate the very programs that are helping Minnesotan families is not the answer. Fraud prevention is about policy and not politics. It's about solutions and not spectacle. But everything that we've seen from the federal government this week is about politics. President Trump is targeting Minnesota because his goal is to distract, divide, and demonize. He has shown over and over again that instead of working to solve problems, he points fingers and places blame on a particular group of people. In order to distract Minnesotans from his unpopularity, his failed tariffs and rising prices, his corruption, he's attacking and defunding Minnesota. In an effort to divide us, he calls our neighbors garbage. And instead of seeking bipartisan solutions, he demonizes and attacks his political opponents. The reality is, Minnesota is one of the best states in the country to raise a family, start a business, or retire. And freezing these child care assistance funds directly impacts small businesses statewide at a time when employers are already struggling to keep their doors open and parents already can't afford early care and learning options. The federal government now will be keeping even more of our tax dollars, although Minnesotans already give more than we receive. It is my understanding that the Department of Children, Youth, and Families is working with their county partners, the teams at the OIG and the BCA on reports of alleged fraud, while the Trump administration continues to find any reason to defund public programs in order to give tax cuts to billionaires. Here in Minnesota, we are going to stay focused on fraud prevention and solutions that will actually make Minnesotans' lives better. DFLers will be doing everything that we can this session on top of fraud prevention to make sure that Minnesota stays a great place to live, work, and raise a family, even as Trump works to defund our state. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Marotz, C-A-R-I-N M-R-O-T-Z, and I work in the Minnesota Attorney General's office, and I'm here to share a statement from Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. The Trump administration is threatening funding for the essential child care services that countless families across Minnesota rely on, apparently all on the basis of one video on social media. To say I am outraged is an understatement. Let me be clear, fraud is unacceptable and individuals responsible for it should be prosecuted. I've been holding fraudsters and scammers accountable for years and will continue to do so. Since I was first elected Attorney General, my office has prosecuted over 300 cases of Medicaid fraud and won over $80 million in judgments and restitution. And that's not counting our success in in going after private sector scammers who rip off Minnesota consumers. Last year, I led a bipartisan push at the Minnesota legislature to expand the resources and tools available to my Medicaid fraud team, and I plan to do that again this year. What I will not do, if it is all within my power, is let the Trump administration devastate funding for services that Minnesota families depend on to afford their lives. We've seen this move before. In mid-December, the Trump administration gave 4 counties in Minnesota 1 month to conduct in-person interviews with almost 100,000 households that receive SNAP benefits to re-verify their eligibility. This demand was both impossible to complete and unnecessary, as SNAP recipients are already re-verified roughly once a year. The Trump administration threatened to cut off food support for almost 500,000 Minnesotans, including over 150,000 children, if Minnesota did not comply with this impossible demand. Just last week, I sued to stop that cruelty. And not for the first time. I filed this latest lawsuit just 6 weeks after I sued the Trump administration to stop the Trump administration from taking food off the tables of low-income Minnesotans during his government shutdown, and we won. There are legal and appropriate ways for the federal and state government to ensure that programs are being administered with integrity. As we have seen time and time again this year, however, this administration seems to have little interest in following the law, including laws that are designed to help state and federal agencies work together. My team and I are exploring all our legal options to ensure that critical child care services do not get abruptly slashed based on pretext and grandstanding. This hasty, scorched earth attack is not just wrong, it may well be illegal, and my team and I remain committed to protecting the people of Minnesota to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Snyder, and I'm a little nervous to be here today with you all. I'm a director of a child care center here in St. Paul, and I'm really proud of the work that we do at my center and across this state to provide care for children and families. Deco just let me know that she had to skip school today, and she just got emotional being here, and I feel like we all are feeling that same way. Like, it's just the emotions are right there. It's not lost on me that there are providers who would want to be here but are afraid to be here. We all know, like, Melissa Hortman serves here at this Capitol. Senator Hoffman continues to serve, and I'm here to speak because God didn't give me a spirit of fear. And I'm here to speak up on behalf of children and families and providers, and no one invites children to come speak at these things. So here I am, you get me. My center was opened by my mom in 1998. She was a family advocate, and she saw that there was a really huge need for affordable child care that was full-time in our city. So she opened our center, and like I said, we've been really proud to accept child care assistance from the beginning because we believe that every child deserves access to high-quality early learning. Yes. 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 Many of the families at my center are one paycheck away from becoming homeless. I'm not exaggerating. If child care assistance is turned off, children can't come to care. That means their parents can't go to work. If they don't go to work, they don't get paid. They risk losing their jobs. If that happens, they cannot make their rent check that month. Many families in Minnesota are living paycheck to paycheck as it is. It's not right. And I'm emotional too, so I apologize. I'm doing my best. In many cases, child care assistance is a crucial piece of survival. I'm generally scared for what can happen next if funding is stopped, and I can't help but think that this is part of a larger designed plan and strategy to cut public funding. And I do see some signs over here that say stop fraud, and I agree, stop it. There are wait lists for these programs that are years long. There is fraud, the fraud that is occurring is not at the hands of families. We need to be looking at who's in power, who's making decisions, who's guarding the purse strings of our tax dollars, my tax dollars too, and making sure that children have places to go that are safe for them to learn, parents can go to work, and providers can keep their doors open. That's what I have to say. I went a little off script. Thank you. We would like to open this up for questions.
I have a question for Karen at the AG's office. Can you address some of this, the inspection process? What sort of signs of fraud do inspectors look for when they're doing these inspections?
Yeah, I would love for the provider who's been part of one of those investigations to speak to her experience. And if you have follow-up questions about that, you can speak with our press team.
We have reached out to state officials and no one's gone back to us. So if you can shed some light on it, that'd be great.
So my experience is that child care providers are part of randomized audits all the time for child care assistants. I've been in charge of child care assistants at my program since about 2010. They come, they ask you for your attendance records. It is extremely detailed. Any information that you don't provide to them on that day, you cannot go back and say, oh, wait, I forgot this one, or oh, maybe this one was wrong, can I correct it? There's no room for that. They're looking at very detailed things, like, for example, if you have an X instead of an A for absent, that's considered a ding against you. That's something that they'll write you a letter that says this is a citation for suspected fraud for an X instead of an A. So imagine my surprise at this narrative that it's so easy to scam child care assistants.
Is it different in these safety violations, that inspection visits?
Yes, they are different.
So when the DCYF said earlier this week that they had found, no findings of fraud, is she speaking to something different than those site visits for safety violations?
I can't speak to what that specific person is speaking to, but my understanding is how the systems operate is DCYF houses both child care assistants and licensing, but they operate separately. Does that make sense?
So in the new requirements that were announced today, what's new compared to compared to the process you just described? What are you being asked to do now? What is different? What's your understanding of that?
I don't have a very good understanding of that. I have seen what you have all seen from the federal government, which was a tweet that said photos and receipts. Like I said, we're family-owned business, so my mom called me and said, well, write to them and tell them that whatever they want, we'll send. And we will, because we want kids to come to our centers. So I have no problem complying with anything that they want.
This is a follow-up for the AG's office.
Okay. I just wanted to step in and I address briefly the question about whether or not the health and safety visits are corresponding with some of the reports of fraud. It's my understanding that some of these more recent allegations of fraud are based on the idea that there aren't any children in these centers, and that they're falsifying attendance records to gather taxpayer dollars for children who aren't actually attending the program. But when DCYF investigators go and check on health and safety visits, they usually see children at the centers, so I think that they are connected, but perhaps not in the way that you're asking.
They're looking at how many kids each time they're going in. Is that your understanding?
I don't. They,
Count our kids every time they come to visit.
Every day. How many kids are enrolled? How many kids are here today?
Who signed them in and out?
all right. Next.
Oh, this is a follow-up question. Do you guys have any results from the DCYF investigations on Monday where they went and checked the child care centers that were featured in the video?
Right, yes. So I am not able to speak to that as it is an ongoing investigation, but we have reached out to the department. We are in touch with them. We're looking for, to hear back on the standard review. Yep.
I have a clarifying question on
Can you speak about the different times that daycare is open? The different hours, specific hours, after school hours? Can you
Oh, right. Well, I think, every daycare center gets to set their own hours. We have very few centers in Minnesota that operate outside of typical business hours between maybe 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., depending on their location. In fact, I think it would be really beneficial if we could expand upon that for folks who work third shift and folks up on the Iron Range who work non-traditional hours as well. So that's something that we're actually considering in committee and how we can support providers. But it just is different at every center, I think. So,
Representative, you've mentioned that this broad strokes approach is not appropriate in your view from the federal government. standing here today, whether it's the daycare centers that were included in that video or in other parts of Minnesota, are you confident based on your work in this chamber that there is not any widespread fraud going on?
You know, it's very difficult to prove a negative. I think that we have to be very careful when we base allegations on the amount of funding that goes to child care providers for providing child care. We can't just look at the amount of money that they've billed and then say, where are these millions of dollars going? Child care is very expensive. Minnesota is one of the more expensive states in the nation to afford child care. And we break it down, if we do simple back of the napkin math, you know, you divide 1.4 or $1.7 million by 52 weeks, it's closer to $32,000. You divide that by 40 hours a week on average, you get closer to $817 per child. These aren't exorbitant amounts of money, they're just real numbers because it is costly to provide quality care for kids.
Could a provider talk about exactly when they will feel the impact of the freeze?
Speak to that?
I would love information on that. I don't have any. We've not been given any. I don't know.
When do you typically receive the equivalent of a check?
We get paid after services are rendered. So we complete our billing process. We submit them to the county for payment. I believe the statute is within 21 days of the receipt of the bill we're supposed to get paid. Your guess is as good as mine if we're going to get paid or not.
There's a question down here, sorry. In the
Counterpart here. I guess I'm trying to get behind how restrictive this additional oversight is. Is there a reason that the state could not provide the federal government the requested records in time to make sure funding is released as scheduled?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you are asking about like the photos and the information that was put out via social media instead of an actual official letter to our state government, which seems like a weird way to govern to me, but
there was
nonetheless.
A demand letter to the governor's
Yes,
office, right?
after the fact, after the tweet came out. So, you know, DCYF is gathering information as best they can. They've done much outreach to the federal government to try to clarify. But as of right now, I mean, we have not been requiring photos of some of these logs, these sorts of things. And it is something that we can take under guidance when we return to the legislative session. And that's something that we've been doing for years, actually, working on child care assistance and strengthening the program integrity. We've been working on all of that with the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And I think that just it's happening so quickly that we just have to make sure that we are getting clarity on what they're actually asking for and what they're going to be requiring. But right now the monies are frozen and we haven't gotten all the detail that we need.
In 2014, Minnesota made national news because there were
Yeah, let's get one because this gentleman's up next. Actually, with the double fried.
Electronic attendance.
Oh, yes.
Can you address that? Is that in place now? Is that planned to be
Right.
enacted soon?
Yes. So the question was about electronic attendance monitoring, which is something that the federal government has been requiring. Minnesota has gotten a waiver for it over past years, and we have appropriated funding for the program. It will be going into effect actually in June of 2026. So we're just months away from full implementation of that, but it has been an ongoing work.
And we'll be happy to answer further questions. We're going to have to wrap things up at this point. We're so grateful to all of you for being here and for all of your work. We'll continue to talk. Thank you so much. And many thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
We're going to sync this in.